October 29th, 2010, from the stylish high-tech underground studios of Ribbit Media in scary Warwick, Rhode Island, this is NewsUndies. For October 29th, 2010, this is NewsUndies, all the news that shouldn't be news. I'm Paul Torville with these headlines. Huffington Post reports GOP candidate was disciplined for ethics violation. How is that news? Shark kills California surfer. In other news, life exists, people win the lottery occasionally, and paint dries slow. Gulf bottom covered in oil. Duh. In pursuit of integrity, NPR hands Fox News a deadly weapon named Juan Williams. Christine O'Donnell's dumb field bleeds into Pennsylvania election space. Brooke Hogan. Hey gang, it's time for celebrity birthdays once again. I got my cake hat on, let's rock. For Saturday the 23rd, Sam Raimi, Al Yankovic, and Paul Torville, that's me. For Sunday the 24th, Mary Bono Mac and Tila Tequila. For Monday the 25th, Minnie Pearl, dead, and Marion Ross. For Tuesday the 26th, Bob Hoskins and Pat Sajak. For Wednesday the 27th, John Cleese and John Gotti, dead. For Thursday the 28th, Jonas Salk, dead, and Jack Sue, dead. For Friday the 29th, Bob Ross, dead, and Don Simpson, dead. That's Celebrity Birthdays. I'm Paul Torville, and I'm done! We'll have stories in detail right after this.
You'll notice that when you watch NewsUndies, I'm always wearing a shirt from the Ursa Pacifica Stitch Cave. Well, now you can too. You can help support NewsUndies by going to the Ursa Pacifica Stitch Cave and getting some kitsch.
Clarence Thomas just can't seem to catch a break. Which is not to say that he deserves one. Clarence Thomas, you know, the enigmatically right-wing African-American Supreme Court Justice whom some on the left perceive as little more than an ideological sock puppet operated by fellow Justice Antonin Scalia. You know, the guy whose confirmation by the Senate was very nearly derailed by allegations from attorney and colleague Anita Hill, who charged that Thomas had made a number of statements and remarks of a sexual nature while she worked with him, ironically enough, at the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. Not the first case of a politically myopic conservative hoisted by his own petard left wanting for a sense of irony. But I digress. The Senate confirmed Thomas. Barely. It was recently revealed that Thomas's wife, an attorney and Tea Party lobbyist, left an early morning voicemail for Anita Hill at her office, suggesting that Hill should consider apologizing for saying what she did about Thomas, and that Hill should pray about it. Whatever that means. So, second plate of facepalm Justice Thomas? Now, Lillian McEwen, a retired judge and former girlfriend of Thomas, has stated in a CNN interview with Larry King that she broke off the relationship with Thomas after he quit drinking in 1982 because he became irritable, angry, short-tempered, asexual. That's nice. In another interview, she also remarked that Thomas became a bully toward his son, was obsessed with his career and exercise regime, and she suspected Thomas had some kind of thing going on with Anita Hill. Of course, it's good to know all of this now, rather than when it could have been, useful or made a difference. Yeah, so, thanks for playing, everyone. CBN, that's the Christian Broadcasting Network, founded in 1961 by phlegmatic evangelical charlatan and octogenarian ton-lifter Pat Robertson. Not CNN, the most trusted name in news. No, CBN. Got it? This is not real news they're reporting. It's not the fake news of The Daily Show with Jon Stewart. It's not even the brilliant satire of The Onion. No, this is CBN, the network dedicated to filling the addled heads of true-believing Christians with unsupported nonsense to reinforce the faith of God Almighty and foster mistrust of anything not publicly advocated by an evangelical pastor. Well, CBN recently ran a story which portrays yoga as a practice which is potentially dangerous to Christian faith and could even jeopardize your chances of getting into heaven. Intercut between the scrolling, diluted paranoiac text they scraped from Albert Mohler's website, there are lingering shots of people, mostly women, in serious, borderline salacious yoga poses. Throughout, the fear-mongering voiceover from the anchors mentions scary Hindu gods several times and how you can't separate the physical component of yoga from the spiritual component. Some basic word use here. If they're truly inseparable, they're not components. Aspects, perhaps. Qualities, maybe. Components? No. Of course, this level of pedantry is missing the whole point. The story makes huge, sweeping positive claims about things no one can actually know anything about to any extent that any reasonable person would call certainty. These things are stated as facts. There are cuts to vox pops in which lay Christians make nebulous claims about how yoga is scary and Jesus doesn't like scary things. Then, to further entrance the believers, they bring on Dr. Linda Mintle. Not mental, Mintle. Just so we're clear, she is mental. But that's not her name. It should be. But it's not. She's introduced as being on the faculty of a medical school. That would be Regent University, formerly known as Christian Broadcasting Network University. I think I almost see a connection here. Where she is an adjunct professor. To be adjunct is to be something added, but not essential. In academics, it's someone who works there, but doesn't have full or permanent status. So the bottom line is that Pat Robertson wants you to fear yoga. Wacky! Blog TV. You remember Will Smith, the likable, arguably versatile actor who got his big break rapping about how parents just don't understand? Well, apparently his 9-year-old daughter had a hankering to make it big in the music biz. So Mummy and Pop Pop threw a bunch of simoleons around, hired some famous producers and directors, and rammed this video down YouTube's throat. In 8 days, the video has gained 7.5 million hits. Clearly, I need rich, famous parents and to be 9 years old again. Juan Williams, whose day job was as a news analyst for NPR and who moonlighted on Fox News, talk about playing both sides of the fence, made a remark to Bill O'Reilly about Muslims in Muslim garb on airliners and how he felt about it. And NPR promptly let him go. Some on the right are shouting censorship, while many on the left are saying Williams has had it coming. Here are Pig and Sheep with their thoughts. Juan Williams is a patriot. Now that he's seen the light and signed on for millions with Fox News, I'm sure the quality of his reporting will improve. NPR receives trillions of dollars in federal funds every minute of every day, and yet they won't let one person on their payroll make offensive remarks as a representative of NPR. What is this world coming to? I've not read Mr. Williams' contract with NPR, but I'll bet you a nickel there's at least one clause in there that says if Williams brings shame or ill repute on the network, NPR is free to tell him to get lost. Williams has, in my opinion, seemed far more at home on Fox anyhow, and I'm sure they're paying him more than NPR ever would or could. Well, that's what Pig and Sheep think. What are your thoughts? Email them to ovcomments@newsundies.com. And now, here's Moose Weintraub with a Sports Half Minute.
Weintraub Sports Half Minute. It's a whole half minute of sports. 30 seconds of sports. Who's a Weintraub Sports Half Minute?
Here's your Sports Half Minute. I'm Moose Weintraub. Cardboard tube dueling may seem childish and silly, but it actually is. Some participants go so far as to make suits of cardboard armor, which is no less...
Weintraub Sports Half Minute.
Thanks, Moose. Always a great report from Moose. Last March, Sony discontinued its 3.5-inch micro floppy disk. Remember that? No? Probably because in all likelihood you haven't handled a floppy disk in 5 years. When was the last time you bought a pre-recorded cassette tape? CD burners pretty much spelled doom for the cassette tape. Except for small pockets of commercial and industrial users, it's hard to find a crummy-grade blank cassette anywhere anymore. Well, Sony, the company which 30 years ago introduced the Walkman brand of portable stereo cassette players, has decided to put it to bed. For a time, Sony could do almost no wrong just by gluing a belt clip on something, picking a verb, and slapping man on the end of it. A quick trip to the Patent and Trademark Office, and it was off to print money. Much like Apple and its I noun. But now, cassette tape is so obsolete, museums don't even know what to do with it. And Sony has decided to say goodbye. Of course, you can still get a Sony Walkman. It's a commodity flash-based music player that offers nothing compelling. Perhaps letting the brand die with the product isn't such a bad idea. We'll have your exclusive PastCast Weather and the final news roundup right after this.
It seems I've acquired something of a reputation as a shameless self-promoter. I don't know how that could have happened. In any event, there's something for nearly everyone in each weekly NewsUndies episode, including opposing viewpoints with Big and Cheap Moose Weintraub Sports Half Minute, and the exclusive PastCast Weather for your part of the country. Unless, of course, you happen to live in Alaska or Hawaii, in which case you're on your own. In any event, NewsUndies, weekly show, comes out on Fridays. Check it out at www.newsundies.com or on YouTube.
And now, here's your exclusive PastCast Weather for the week ending Friday, October 29th, 2010. The Ohio Valley had rain, then sunny, cold. Twice. The Deep South had warm, scattered thunderstorms. In the upper Midwest, there was rain, then sunny, cold, then continued cold with scattered rain and snow. And that's your exclusive PastCast Weather. Willow Smith. Famed author, evolutionary biologist, and atheist Richard Dawkins got an unpleasant wake-up call recently. Josh Timonen, who had reportedly been a driving force behind Dawkins' website, richarddawkins.net, and many of the multimedia efforts of the Richard Dawkins Foundation for Reason and Science, was allegedly a thief. According to court papers, Dawkins claims Timonen embezzled $375,000 from the online store he ran for Dawkins. The bottom line is that the 18-page complaint asks for $950,000 plus punitive damages. And finally, and I do mean finally, we all saw this coming, didn't we? Just in time to hamstring Republican chances in the upcoming midterm elections, George W. Bush's memoir, Decision Points, is coming out November 9th. At a recent trade conference in Chicago, Bush plugged his book and talked a bit about his legacy. He said he wanted to be remembered as a guy who had priorities and was willing to live by those priorities. Yeah, well, that's great. Stalin was a guy who had priorities, too. Remember Hitler? He had priorities. That's not meant to equate Bush with Stalin or Hitler. Stalin and Hitler's were doers. Bush was more of a bumbling, mildly retarded older cousin you didn't dare serve alcohol to. With priorities. And just to give you an idea of the kind of reflection time Bush has spent since leaving office, his greatest failure was not reforming Social Security in 2005. I would have gone back to his failure to stand up, shake the poop out of his pants leg, and do something presidential instead of continuing to read My Pet Goat. Or we could go back a little further and point to his failure to respond to the PDB that was titled, Bin Laden Determined to Strike in U.S. I mean, he didn't have to read the first paragraph. The title should have been enough to spark some kind of frickin' response. More than a month before 9/11. Personally, I think his biggest failure was when he failed to concede to Al Gore after he lost the election in 2000, but I'm not bitter. Well, that's all for this edition of News Undies. Remember, News Undies is a weekly show, and we'll be back on Friday, November 5th with fresh undies. Now, between now and then is Halloween and Election Day, so you know what to do. If you see news that shouldn't be news, email your story tips to undies@newsundies.com. Thanks for watching. Until next time, I'm Paul Torbill. After that, I might be sawing my own head in half trying to expunge the memory of Willow Smith's auto-tuned, heavily processed, obviously edited voice.